All right, hello and welcome to the Thursday Nite Rant once again. We're talking tonight about all the live service games that have died or are about to die, as we found out in recent weeks. There's been a lot of games that are just going to wither on the vine in the next few months, and they've all kind of been announced within the last week or so, right? So we've got Apex Legends Mobile, Babylon's Fall, Battlefield Mobile, Bravely Default, Brilliant Lights. I absolutely had no idea that was a thing. Apparently it was only announced last week. Crimsite, Crossfire X, Deathverse, Let It Die. I heard a couple of people going on about Deathverse on this website, actually, saying it was
I liked
good.
it. I reviewed it well. I actually liked Deathverse, but yeah, I think on like week one, no one was playing it. And to be fair, they're not cancelling that one. They've only put it in temporary hiatus while they do major like development stuff on it. Yeah. But let's be real,
they're just delaying the inevitable. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to them, but yeah, it's probably not going to go super well.
We've got Dragon Quest, The Adventures of Dai, A Hero's Bonds.
All right.
There's too many words in that title. Echo VR, Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier, Hellfire Tactics, Knockout City. Knockout City, I thought that was doing all right. Rumbleverse, Spellbreak, and what's that last one? Love Life School Idol Festival. Is that a thing?
Yeah, apparently that's also going. I mean, here's the problem: like 3 or 4 of those games, and maybe this is me and my limited scope. I've not heard of like a bunch of them.
Apex Legends Mobile and Battlefield Mobile, like that. Those to me are like very low on the interest ladder, I guess. Where one of them was a mobile game, somewhat based on Apex Legends, and then EA figured out that they can't quite connect it to the current Apex Legends, which is the thing that you should do now with your mobile game, to give people who play the console and PC game reason to play your mobile game.
Like Warzone does that, I think.
Which is Warzone's trying to do that with Warzone Mobile. And they realize they can't do that with Apex Legends Mobile, so they're like, just get rid of it. Battlefield Mobile, same thing. It's irrespective of the quality of the games. Because I didn't play much Apex Legends Mobile, but people seem to be happy with it. It won like Game of the Year on both app stores last year.
I didn't know that.
So it's supposedly a good game. And Battlefield Mobile, from the leaked footage I have seen and from like seeing what it is, it looked better than 2042. Like honestly, like it looked like a real Battlefield game, and it had destruction, which is not a thing in 2042 really to a major degree. So I don't think it was anything to do with the quality of either game. It's just it didn't fit in the new plan, I guess, of connecting everything together. So it's not very tragic, is what I'm trying to say.
But just as a sort of, because this is definitely an industry-wide trend, and it felt like everyone, I think Chris Dring was talking about this the other day, we're talking about it in context of Ubisoft are constantly trying to get a live service game to kind of stick, and they haven't quite managed it, and like every other publisher has a big cash cow that just keeps on plowing away while they, it's a tentpole for the other stuff, but Ubisoft hasn't quite managed to do that. That's the context he was talking about it. But at some point, surely you're just going to run out of people. Because these are games that like they demand so much of everyone's time. I mean, not all of them, but generally they do, right? You have to log in like every day. Like people have. I mean, Connor, the other week you were talking to me about your sort of schedule for doing your dailies and stuff, and it sounded like a second job, right?
Yeah, every day after my 9 to 5, I get in at least 1 hour of a rotating list of live service games. Yeah, every single day, and it's like working out. It's a process that you just kind of do it. But
this is nothing like working out. There's absolutely
nothing
the
opposite. It's like the opposite
in every possible way. There's
you kind of like kind of like stand up from my desk for a bit, stretch it, and sit back down to play video games. But you're right. It's absolutely like they're fighting over people's time, right?
Yeah.
Because if you release a live service game that pops off really hard and people love it and play it and spend money in it, most importantly, you're right, it's a money generator. At least that's the thought process of it. But there's only so much time in a day, And if you want players who are going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time in your live service game, that kind of has to be their live service game. You can maybe, if you're not super busy, if you don't have any kids or anything going on, you can maybe juggle 2 or 3 properly. Yeah. But you can't juggle like 5. It kind of links into the Battlefield Mobile and Apex Mobile thing, right? If you can't link your progression, right, for those games, it's a whole nother live service battle royale game, shooter game you have to invest time into. How easy is it to get people off Fortnite or even your own games? Apex Legends is on PC on consoles.
And Fortnite quite significantly is just like platform agnostic. It's the same game that runs on everything. Yeah. It's your same character, right? Everything on any platform. Yeah.
So if you release a new live service game, be it Rumbleverse or any of the ones that are recently cancelled, you need to steal people away from these games they've already invested a lot of time and maybe money into, or maybe you can say that, we're trying to appeal to a different crowd. But like how big that different crowd could be, if they're going to be willing to invest all that time into your game, or if you're even going to be able to like get enough people in to, keep your game sustainable is hard to say, which has kind of led to the entire sort of genre of games be like really feast or famine. You either make it make it and you make so much money. Yes, we made Apex Legends, we're the best. Or you make a game that could even be a good game. Yeah. Let It Die, Deathverse, Rumbleverse was good. I played a bit of that. Like all these games are good, but they just don't get the attention they need to be sustainable. So
especially if they're a bit more of a niche idea as well. Like I can imagine Rumbleverse already has a smaller potential audience than a straight up shooter, right?
Yeah, it looked a bit goofy and it was wrestling focused. So like the market you're aiming for is just smaller, right?
I mean, that's just surely the market is aiming for is games journalists. Right? The only people who ever talk about wrestling.
But there's something to be said for having a sustainable game that is not that doesn't do the win it all or lose it all approach. Like I think Knockout City, I feel like was a good example of that. In that it came out in the summer of 2021, so it's almost 2 years old, and then everyone was talking about it for a month. Then no one's talked about it. I feel like even EA realized during that process that this game is not going to be a thing. So they dropped it and they gave the IP to the studio, and then the studio went on to self-publish it, and they had a bunch of seasons, and every once in a while you'd hear like, oh, they had a collab with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or this thing or that thing. Yeah. So to me, it was successful enough. Like if a game, in my mind, if a game lives in like the Steam's top 30, top 40, which is to say like 4 to 6K daily concurrent, I feel like enough of those people are buying the Battle Pass, enough of those people are buying the expensive cosmetics, that the studio can pay its salaries and invest in more content without really making billions of dollars. Yeah. So it's strange that they're doing this now, which to me says that line has not stayed where it was or went up. It just went down. So at that point, it's not commercially feasible. Rumbleverse, I feel like, is almost exactly the same example. In fact, if you look at the statement, the open letter that they had on their website, it sounds to me that decision was made on Epic's part more than it was on Iron Galaxy's part. So to me, Epic was looking at this thinking it should be on a certain level, and it was not, irrespective of what it's actually doing. Because Epic is a massive company, it's going to have different calculations than a small studio making it on the game. So to me, it sounds like Epic was like, this is not worth it for us. Whereas reading that letter, Iron Galaxy's stake was, no, this could be worth it, and we are trying to make it worth it. And so the best thing they could do is that give them back the IP if they don't already own it, and then Iron Galaxy could either self-publish it or find another publisher that's not interested in Fortnite money and like interested in just making a good game. Yeah. And I feel like that game would survive. Right? Yeah, that game could survive. Like I could totally see a Devolver publishing this. I could even see like Microsoft throwing them a bone so that they can make Killer Instinct 2 and just putting it on Game Pass. Like that game is like Rumbleverse is a good game. It's just it's never going to make Fortnite money. And I feel like limiting it to the Epic Game Store and all the weird stuff that you had to go through to play that game on PC.
Yeah.
Just put that game on Steam, put that game everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it could float fairly well. Like Iron Galaxy is a team in the Midwest. It's not a big team. They don't need to make California money to they don't need to spend California money on the studio. So I feel like there is hope for that. Pretty much everything else is like, yeah, okay. It's a game that you've never heard of, or you knew already, like this had the shelf life. Like Crossfire X, that was a spin-off of a free-to-play, PC-only Counter-Strike knockoff, massive in Asia and some parts of the Middle East. A spin-off of that is only on Xbox, which is like, it's the most like mental gymnastic that you have to do. And it was only available on Xbox, and it was like sort of like Counter-Strike, but also some Battlefield stuff with the big mode that they had. Like, are you surprised no one's playing, even though it's free to play? Like, are you surprised that really no one is? It's just what? So I look at all the other stuff and like, yeah, okay. But I am sad about Rumbleverse and Knockout City the most, because those games make sense, and to me they can be profitable.
Rumbleverse as well. I think it's from the impression I'm getting is that it just had too many things kind of reducing the audience sort of almost arbitrarily, right? So like, with the subject matter, I mean, wrestling, it's not niche, but it's like, you know, not everyone's into wrestling, right? Yeah. In the same way that everyone loves a shooter, for example. But like, if you couple that with the fact that, as you say, it was on Epic Game Store, all these things are like dividing the audience. And then, you know, you get to a certain point where if people have to jump through hoops to do anything.
Being an Epic exclusive is bad for live service games.
Yeah, well, certainly on the PC side.
On the PC side, because it's just...
Everyone hates it.
Like, if you're doing it for... it's not even like everyone hates it. If you're doing it for a single-player game that's already going to sell limited number of copies, and you're getting some guarantees from Epic, like, good on you. Like, get that money. No problem. Yeah. But a live service game, you need it on Steam. Like, I'm sorry. You need it on Steam. And I feel like, obviously, when Epic is funding it, it's not going to put it on Steam, because even though they'd like to say like, oh, it's the open platforms, they're not putting the shit on Steam, which they should. Yeah. If they really believe in what they're saying. And yeah, wrestling is niche, but ultimately that game, like, I feel like was making money, just not enough for Epic to make sense. So, and I still think it's going to come back in some form.
So, I mean, there's, I guess, hope for a few of these then. Death First we've mentioned already. Anything Final Fantasy related feels like, unless it's the big MMO that's just, you know, continues to do remarkably well, it feels like anything to do with Square Enix is struggling, right? And we were talking about this actually on the podcast earlier about games that didn't do as well as expected. Anything to do with Square, you have to also like sort of try and see it through the prism of the warped kind of Square Enix expectation filter.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to like make $1 billion of every sort of gaming fad and trend they can, right? And they're funding all of it with Final Fantasy XIV money.
Including fucking NFTs, yeah.
Including NFTs. The first Soldier, I think the letter they put out when that game was announced to be closing down was like, we're not happy with it, which was a bit weird because they already put out 4 seasons. The community wasn't super big, but they seemed happy with it. I talked to some people about how they really like big, you know, in-game boss fights with Cloud and like Behemoth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I got the impression they were just like, yeah, we're gonna just turn this off. Sorry, lads. What Sharif said about smaller scale, I think expectation from publishers plays a big part, right? Because I feel like a lot of companies go in saying like, we're gonna make a live service game that's gonna make us tons of money. And if you do that, the chances of you being disappointed is massive. But there are live service games that have been out for ages and aren't the biggest things in the world that have like chucked along. For Honor is one. That game has just been out for ages and people keep playing that and swinging swords about and assumedly spending money. So like, maybe if the scope is lowered and you're just like, we want to make a game that is good, that is a live service model, but we're not going to aim for the stars with it. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, if you interview or talk to any dev making like a live service battle royale or anything, and you say, okay, so like, how are you going to keep people playing this and not Fortnite? Their answer is always like, we'll try our best. I think our game's really good, and like, I guess that's all you can do.
Battle passes. Have you heard of these things?
Yeah. Well, the smaller scope, you can survive with a smaller amount of those people. You actually do manage to like tear off these bigger games.
I think anyone doing anything right now, whether it's like making direct rivals to Fortnite or just making any video game, even single player video games, even making TV shows, even making YouTube videos, I think everyone has to at some point think, well, what about this is going to stop people playing Fortnite for 10 minutes, because Fortnite is such a juggernaut. It kind of reminds me of the, basically the same situation of like MMOs back in the day. You had once kind of World of Warcraft was established and was the biggest thing in that space, the biggest fish in the pond. You had all these other ones. My timeline might be getting a bit muddled, but you had stuff like Anarchy Online and loads of other like really interesting things that cropped up.
Warhammer Online.
Warhammer Online, that's dead, rest in peace. Yeah. WildStar, rest in peace.
Jeez.
But then you had stuff like EVE Online, which
still
was never
along.
Yeah, it still trucks along. It was never the biggest, most subscribed MMO, but it had such a passionate community that like it got as big. It felt like it got as big as it was ever going to, and then just stayed at that level, and that was fine.
Yeah.
And it's still like the wonderful thing about EVE Online, just as an aside, like I love how it's such an interesting game to talk about from the outside. I don't think if I ever played it, I would ever find it anywhere near as interesting as it is to kind of read about the mental things that happen in the economy and stuff like that.
You bring up MMOs has given me an interesting thought. There are two MMOs that are kind of still alive right now.
Yeah.
And aren't nearly as big as World of Warcraft, but are still kind of, have their community and are still funding new content.
Yeah.
And that's Guild Wars 2 and New World. And the thing with those two games is they don't have that free-to-play model. You buy that game and then you start playing it, and from there they can sell you extra cosmetics and stuff. I think maybe when you have publishers and stuff looking at, okay, how much money have we made off this game, that's meant to have like a long shelf life. And if it's a free to play game, you just go in, you try out for like 2 hours, you go, oh, I don't really like wrestling, you put it down. But if you've bought Guild Wars 2 and maybe in an expansion or two, you go, okay, I'm in, I've played it, that's on my desktop now. And you can go back to it whenever, and the devs can be like, okay, well, we've made already a good chunk of cash from everyone who's testing this game out, and from there they can keep on kind of keeping themselves going, propelling, and then maybe selling some extra stuff on the side.
I wonder about New World though, because that game is not where it was when it launched. So right now it's just chugging along, and I wonder like if Amazon is in a sort of situation like Epic was, where it's like it is making money, but it's not what it used to be, and it's not the massive thing that they banked on. So they could just cut their losses and be like, we're out.
That is true, they could do that, but then that would mean that the only game they've actually ever released would be closed down, which would be a pretty bad look for Amazon. But you are right, obviously. It's not the it's not the powerhouse it used to be. I know when New World launched, it had tons of players around it, and then it kind of really, really, really fell off.
I remember
and
a
it
lot
only
of people
started going back up with an expansion they released. But other than that,
I remember people testing, people reviewing New World when press codes started to go out, and the general, I don't know why my camera's going mental, sorry. And the general sort of impression was like, this is actually good. And I can't believe Amazon Game Studios have actually made a good game after what seemed like sort of, an endless string of aborted attempts to do so.
Also mention Elder Scrolls Online, because that is technically
that's true.
It never seems to be in trouble, that does it? And it just seems to go from strength to strength.
This is one of those things. Like, I think they're keeping it within expectations, and then they're selling enough of their expansions, because it has 6,000 expansions. And then if you're buying expansions, like that's a sale of a game effectively. Like it's the price of a new game. So if you're selling enough of those, and then you have on the back end, because the game is technically free to play. On the back end, you're making a bunch of stuff from the free to play players and cosmetics, and so like you're diversifying effectively your funding. It's good enough to pay for that team to make new content for those people, and to like that's the thing. I don't think like that game is doing like massive like World of Warcraft money or anything crazy, but it's good enough. So you can make a case for Elder Scrolls Online. I feel like Rumbleverse could survive.
Elder Scrolls Online is in a really good spot generally, I think, because it is quite uniquely tied to. I guess World of Warcraft had this as well to an extent, but it is tied to like very, very warmly felt nostalgia for a series that people love, particularly Skyrim and Oblivion, and a lot of those expansions, all 6,000 of them, a lot of those expansions like tap directly into that nostalgia
for sure.
So like every time when they brought out the Morrowind expansion, like even people like me were like, oh, Morrowind, I've got to try this out. And then and people play that game for so many different reasons as well. A lot of people try and play it, so there's lots of guides about how to play Elder Scrolls Online solo, trying to make it more of an Elder Scrolls experience.
I was actually looking like when they announced the new expansion during that developer direct the other week. I went to Twitch to see, because you never see that game in the top, I don't know, 15 or 20 games on Twitch, but it's always humming along. And so its profile was raised a little bit because they had a lot of like co-watch streams, which is like people streaming the official stream and then commenting on it live. And I noticed like a lot of those streamers are like skew older, like they're my age or older. So they have definitely been with the Elder Scrolls, or they have known about it since the days of Morrowind and the days of like before Skyrim came out and the anticipation that game had. And I also noticed a lot of like female and queer people. So it seems like there's a community there for those people that they have like made friends and stuff, which was great to see. Like, okay, like there's absolutely people that you may not, that have 80 viewers that no one is going to hear of, but are having fun with their communities. It doesn't have to be like Nick Merckx doing this on a video or whatever the hell. Like, yes, those people are having fun. They're buying the game. That's sustainable. Like, keep going, keep doing that.
It's one of these things that's it's beneficial to keep that running for other parts of the business with Elder Scrolls as well. Much like Final Fantasy XIV, I guess, where the attention that's sustained keeps the sort of excitement ticking over for Elder Scrolls 6 and stuff like that, right? It just means that Elder Scrolls is never out of the news. I mean, not that you need Elder Scrolls Online to keep Elder Scrolls in the news, because like Skyrim, every time we write anything about Skyrim, it goes mental, and God knows why. But it seems like it's beneficial, even if it's just breaking even. It seems like there's no reason to shut it down on ZeniMax's front or Bethesda's front, because like it's if it's not necessarily a cash cow, there's a lot of other benefits to keeping that going, surely. I just wanted to wrap up by asking you guys what you thought of what does this mean anything sort of for the wider industry? Like, do you think we are seeing a shift away from gaming is very trend driven and very cyclical like that. So people, there's a few big live service games that come along, and then all of a sudden every single publisher is telling all the studios under their umbrella, you need to make a live service game, and it needs to do Fortnite money. And then a bunch of those happen, and then they fail dismally, and then they move on to the next thing. It's to say, like this is an industry driven by iteration, outright theft.
For sure.
Like in the best possible way. Like, does this signal maybe the end of a sort of trend? And are all these kind of studios going to go on to something else now, rather than trying to chase that live service kind of holy grail?
It's a tricky question. It could very well be like a canary in the coal mine moment. If you look at it's hard to tell because I'm tempted to be like, well, look at like the reaction to live service stuff when it comes out. When that Suicide Squad game revealed that it had like a battle pass and live service mechanics in it, people are like fuck off. What's this?
So many tweets to people like, wow, I'm not interested in that anymore.
And you see that, you go, okay, well, maybe people are sick of this. But then you could also be like, well, maybe that's just Twitter. Maybe that's just social media. And then your average guy or average person who just plays video games gets stuck every now and again into something. Will be like, oh, cool, a battle pass. I can get a cool new costume for King Shark or whatever. And they don't really care. I think... I don't think this thing will kind of collapse overnight. It will be a very slow and steady process. We'll start to see these big pillar games like Warzone and Apex Legends and that sort of thing slowly drop off. Those games, while people aren't super chuffed with them at the moment, seem to still be doing okay. Warzone 2 is a new season, and if that goes down well, maybe that'll keep going. Fortnite's just like a straight line doing good all the time, right?
Fortnite
it might be the end of... Hopefully it's just the end of people expecting to make Fortnite money or expecting to make big money off it. Hopefully it's the end of people being like that, and instead of being like, yeah, we can make a live service game, but we're just going to make it kind of middle size, that we're going to have our community and do that sort of thing, right? And I would rather it be that than live services are dead, we're not going to do any of those projects ever again. That thing you've been working on for a year, cancel it.
There's obviously room for it. It's just there's probably not room for every single new project to be a twist on it.
If the game industry is good at anything, it's good at ignoring lessons and not learning from them. And I don't this is not a diss on the games industry, like, look at me, I'm so cool. No, the game, like most of the publishers that make these poor decisions, EA was Anthem, you have all these like Square Enix with Marvel's Avengers, not that Square Enix makes good decisions elsewhere, or whatever. Like all these companies are corporations out for profit. So it's really a problem with capitalism. You need to be doing what the things that the investors, which are cats, you need a shiny object to throw in front of them so that they can give you money. Sometimes that's subscription service for everything. Sometimes it's NFTs. Sometimes it's Web3. Whatever it is that you have to do, whatever grift that you have to catch on to get them to give you money. And so EA found success with Ultimate Team. So they were like, well, we need Ultimate Team in everything. And they destroyed a bunch of their franchises because of it. Did that make them learn from anything? Not really. The same thing for a lot of the other publishers. Activision put all of its eggs in Call of Duty, and then Call of Duty dropped in a year with Vanguard. They were like, well, shit, we have nothing else to do. I was like, yes, because you made this. Like, this is your decision. Did that stop them? No. They have more studios making more Call of Duty now than they did then. So they're really bad at learning from these decisions because they need to keep making money. And in order for them to do that, they need money from investors. In order for them to convince investors to get the money, they need to give them the illusion of, oh, we have a Fortnite in the making. We have this thing in the making. It's like, really? All right, well, here's $1 billion. This is the operation. This is what the business operates on. So I don't think it's going to change. I think some big games are going to continue to fail, and some will succeed, of course. I think the smart developers and the smart publishers will learn from that and try to make a more sustainable thing that just floats, pays for its the salaries for its employees, and keeps the community satisfied without any illusions of like what money they could be making if they went into that. No, we're making a thing for wrestling fans. Inherently, in each group, as you said, this thing pays for our people, keeps our community happy, is in the top 30 most played games on Steam. We're happy with that. We can go make money elsewhere on other stuff. We don't need this to be the be all end all. So I think like smart people will learn those lessons, but the big companies inherently by their very nature will not.
They're too shareholder driven. They're too beholden to people who read about some trending topic on Twitter and then get on the phone and go, why aren't we doing this? And it's been the ruin of a lot of like really good projects, unfortunately. All right, I think we're going to leave it there, but I don't know. I mean, I'll talk to you guys about this before. Like, my whole thing is single player. Like, I'm very rarely get involved with anything to do with live service or multiplayer because I'm old and I'm crap.
Yeah.
I can't compete on any level in multiplayer games at all. So I tend to just video games for me are just like, just let me like fire around Skyrim and steal stuff and whatever, and I'm happy. So these revelations about all the live service games shutting down, I feel like they don't really affect me directly, but as a trend for the industry as a whole, I am worried by it. I'm worried just in general by the idea that any evidence that the industry as we know it isn't sort of sustainable, and a lot of it isn't. So, but yeah, as you say, like there was never any danger of everyone getting to run a live service game that did Fortnite money, and that's what half of these things were chasing. Yeah. So. Right. Well, look, join us next week or the week after or whenever we decide to do it again. And at some point we have to have a moan about AI.
Oh, I don't want to, but it's such a horrible conversation. It's happening.
Like, what if we do the episode of this that's about AI, but we just get AI to have the entire argument for us?
We did kind of do that with the podcast, though. We'd have like the AI write the intro and outro, and it almost was believable. So I feel like we could.
We can't redo bits. We'd have to do something totally different.
No, this is doing the whole episode. But think about it. Like if we just take what the AI generates, and then we edit it a bit, like CNET, and then put it as us doing the conversation. That seems like the thing.
What's the worst that could happen? Google can find out and just tank.
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen is like apocalyptic, but let's not get into that. I've been Jim Trinker for VG247, and you should definitely like and subscribe, because if you don't, you smell. Check out the website, check out the podcast, check it all out. Check it out like it's Supermarket Sweet, man. I'll speak to you later.